All right, so at the opening of the program, I've got some numbers to share with you, and this is from Eskom's briefing earlier today. This is a status update on South Africa and load shedding. In June, Eskom spending just over 1.5 billion rand on diesel. Eskom using 14 litres of diesel every single second. 840 litres per minute being utilised equals 50,400 litres per hour, and then just over 1.2 million litres of diesel per day. So these are the numbers. That is the snapshot. That's our status today. We are told we are staring down the possibility of stage 8 load shedding. That was the latest that we heard from Eskom earlier today. All right, I want to welcome our guests. We are at stage 8 we're staring down the possibility of stage 8 load shedding. We're 2,000 megawatts away, says Eskom. We're also facing a potentially record-breaking year of power cuts ahead, with the country already seeing 40% increase in load shedding, according to the CSIR. So I want us to make sense of what that means for households and for the economy. Andile Nomalala is the president of the Black Management Forum, and we'll also bring in Andile Nomalala, an energy expert, a little bit later on in the program. But Andile, I want to perhaps come to you. As you listen to the statistics that we are sharing with our viewers today, what Eskom shared us, what are some of the thoughts that cross your mind as the BMF?
Thank you, Iman, and good evening to your viewers. Look, let's start with the diesel, the pricing and the cost of diesel. It's a clear case that there is over-reliance. We are running a country entirely on diesel supply. Now, the question is, which is what Andrew hasn't answered, is who are those suppliers that they are buying diesel from? Because between me and you, Iman, you know that as the BMF, we're very clear from day one. And it had nothing to do with race. It had nothing to do with anything. We're clear that Andre and the chairman and the board and the executives of Eskom are inadequate. They are not the right fit for the job. And their track record, anyone who cared to do a thorough recruitment process wouldn't have appointed Andre as a CEO of Eskom. Now, fast forward 4 years later, Andre's role at Eskom now is nothing else but a commentator. He only comes and gives excuses and tell all different kind of stories. The reality of the matter is that he doesn't say anything about how are they going to deal with the problem. Now, let me come to what needs
before we move on, Andile, let's just go to this. As the BMF, you have been historically critical of Andre de Ruyter, and in the past you have actually been on record calling for his suspension. You have reiterated that point of view right now, yet just, I think, 2 days ago or so, we heard from the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan, share with us a view of where we are and why we are here, and a vote of confidence in this leadership.
No, even the minister himself, by the way, is access to requirements. We know that since he has taken over, remember, we don't deny that there was a state capture, but we can't live for the rest of our lives only coming with the excuses of there's a state capture. There has been a government post the state capture, the 6th administration. President Cyril took over 18 months before the elections, and Eskom was a critical entity. I sat at a BUSA meeting in 2018 when we diagnosed the problems that comes with Eskom and what would that do to the economy. To date, 4 or 5 years later, no one has done anything about them. It's not like tomorrow you would get a situation where there's no load shedding. Andre is just giving excuses. Let me tell you, Iman, What is the story here? The story is that there are power plants in Mpumalanga that are on the line of the gas power line from Mozambique, that Eskom is refusing to change and repurpose those power plants from coal to gas that could have supplied the energy into our country. There is an agenda, a selective agenda at Eskom of only talking about renewable energies. Any intervention that they do is reliant on renewable energy. To date, there would have been plenty of private sector companies that would have built on their own balance sheet a 2,000 megawatts power plants, maybe 3 of them, we would have had that 6,000 megawatts that they are talking about of coal. We can't compromise the entire economy because we want only to look right to the rest of the world when every other person, when they are faced with their own challenges of Russia and Ukraine, they've reverted back to their coal power plants. Now the economy is collapsing and is being collapsed because we must rely on a particular Andre that is a complete useless manager. And BMF can't excuse that.
Right. You can't excuse it, and you've laid out a whole alternative scenario that you say could take us from incapacitation to capacitation. Where does the teeth and the power and strength then of the BMF lie in taking these concerns a step further, in making a real call for some of the changes you say are critical and necessary right now?
We mentioned it, that you can't have, we love Professor Mokgoba, but you can't have Professor Mokgoba presiding over a critical state-owned entity as Eskom. That business, Iman, is the most complex and is the most dire of any other business that or the lifeblood of our country. Now, the president himself, and I said this before, and I know he doesn't like it, the president himself has sat in many boards, including Standard Bank, MTN. He knows that those individuals are incapable of being directors of such an important institution.
But it would suggest then, Andile, given the scenario you're painting now, that the president is willfully driving us off the cliff.
In fact, I can forget the president. I think the ANC government is a reckless government. I think without doubt. The ANC government is very reckless about our country. They are very reckless. These things don't need any much of an insight, besides the fact that you go and scrap through. There's Brian Dames, there's Jacob Moroka, there's Dan Marakane, there's Tulani Gabash. These guys were there, they're experienced, they understand this thing. And if you know how important Eskom is, you go anywhere in the world to find the right skill to deal with the problem. We know that the problem was because of their own pillaging to start with, which is the ANC government. And now, instead of solving the problem, they are prioritizing their deals. You must go ask who is making money out of the diesel supplies at Eskom. You will find that there's a Glencore there, through Chevron, and they are making millions of money. You will find that there's a Sasol there. Right. And that doesn't drive the change that we want to start with on the transformation agenda. You have a minister who sold an airline for 57 rand, completely irresponsible. And this is our future, by the way. This is the future of our country, and black people are secondary to the agenda of ANC.
51 rand, if I'm not mistaken. But Andile, as we end this, you've talked a lot about some of the structural problems, the leadership problems, and the political problems that are blighting Eskom and leading us to the point in which we find ourselves today. Let's come then to the practical issues. Eskom has cited the unions just today, talking to if we have another loss of, or we have had a loss of just over 2,500 megawatts, and this is a direct result of strike action, the equivalent of 3 stages of load shedding. There's a further 2,600 megawatts at risk if this is prolonged. What is your assessment then of, in a sense, this depiction of the unions holding the country and the utility to ransom?
Look, the union story is an excuse, Iman. Let me give you the solutions, because people would think that at the BMF we spend time complaining. We don't. Let me tell you, if tomorrow you can go and open up a public tender, a power purchase agreement public tender for 2,000 megawatts coal power plants, Exaro and many other private companies will build those power plants tomorrow. It takes 18 months, Iman, to build a 2,000 megawatts power plant and connect it to the grid of coal. And then once you have solved the basic problem of the base load, then you can deal with disintegrating Eskom. You can deal with integrating or bringing in IPPs, but you cannot put a solution whilst everything else is falling apart.
Right.
Now, we are saying private sector companies are capable. The balance sheet of Eskom won't be used. All Eskom would do would have an off-take agreement when somebody has built the 2,000 megawatts power plants. And once we have a base load, then we can move with the modernization of Eskom. And the first other thing is that as government, you have Central Energy Fund that can plan together with Eskom and quickly use their own power, their own gas power line from Mozambique and 10 over a period of 18 months. One of the power stations, those power stations, man, let me tell you, I went and gathered some information about this. Those power stations, the old power stations, forget that they have defects in the engines. The coal itself is no longer the quality of coal that they have. So those guys are burning stones there and expecting that they're going to have electricity.
We've heard of those reports as well. Andile, sadly we're out of time. A lot of critical points that you have raised, a lot of alternative solutions that you say Eskom has at its disposal right now. And perhaps these are things, as a theme, we can pick up here on Full View. But for now, that's where we leave it. Andile Nomalala is the president of the BMF.